Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations with Father Bosco, a webinar series hosted by the Office of Mission and Ministry and the Georgetown University Alumni Association. Thank you for taking time out of your day to connect virtually with fellow Hoyas for today's conversation, a student affairs leader on an Ignatian journey with Todd Olson, Georgetown's Vice President for Student Affairs. Our host, Father Mark Bosco, is Vice President for Mission and Ministry at Georgetown University and holds an appointment in the Department of English. A native of St. Louis, Missouri, Father Bosco joined Georgetown in 2017 after 14 years at Loyola University Chicago, where he was a tenured faculty member and served as director of the Hank Center for the Catholic Intellectual Heritage. As a scholar, Father Bosco has focused much of his work on the intersection of theology and art, specifically the British and American Catholic literary tradition. He has published on a number of authors, including the writers Graham Greene and Flannery O'Connor, and is the co-director and co-producer of the new feature-length documentary on Flannery O'Connor. This award-winning film will have its television premiere on PBS American Masters in March. I'm Kelly Young, Associate Director of Strategic Engagement in Alumni Relations, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to share a few reminders. This conversation is being recorded. The recording will be made available on our YouTube channel, and you will receive the recording link in our follow-up email. Father Mark and Todd will answer audience questions towards the end of their discussion. Please send in your questions using the question section of the GoToWebinar control panel. If you're having any technical difficulties or other issues, please also submit those concerns via the questions section of your control panel. Without further ado, I'm pleased to turn things over to Father Mark Bosco.
Thank you, Kelly. And we know that your puppy dog wants to talk with you on this webinar as well. That was great. It was nice to hear a little background like that. Well, really good to be with you, Todd. I really appreciate you taking the time. I remember walking across campus earlier this summer, and I had a mask on, and you had a mask on, and I really didn't, with masks on, I didn't, not until you were like 10 feet in front of me, it's like you had to say hi, Mark, and I'm, oh my gosh, how the mask kind of hides the eyes and the face, and we know each other so well. Again, it was a new way to kind of be in front of each other. So, Todd, you've been a great, you're just such a great Vice President of Student Affairs here. And I know that you've been really under the gun with so much going on with the pandemic. And I thought we might start before we get into questions, just your take on, the announcement of the spring semester and how that all played out. And it's been a really tough time for everyone, but I thought maybe you wanted to make a comment about that first.
Sure. So Father Mark, first, thanks for the opportunity. And it is always good to see you on campus, even if the recognition takes a moment longer. But as you noted, it has been a very strange and in many ways a very difficult last few months. And we know that's true for those of us who are on campus. We know it's true for all the Hoyas around the country and around the world. And I just want to note, as we've made our spring announcement, I know that news and that direction, while it was reassuring for some members of our community, it also, I know, was deeply disappointing for others, for many students, family members, faculty, staff, etc. And I just would want you to know that there's a lot of careful thought that has gone into this process. We know it is an almost impossible balancing act of thinking about the strong desire of our students to be back and together on the hilltop, and the very real public health needs, the well-being needs that we need to take seriously, that we just need to prioritize during this time, especially as the pandemic grows in intensity in the last few weeks. I would just note that we, in our planning for spring, really tried, as I said, to prioritize safety, also to prioritize our seniors and making sure that they have the opportunity to be on campus for their last semester. So we've invited the seniors who are not in the DC area to come back to campus. We're making plans for the seniors who are living in the DC area to have access to some services and experiences on campus. We also continue to prioritize the needs of our high need students, those who do not have a stable or supportive home situation. So welcome a small number of additional students in that category back with us. So we're doing our best in very difficult circumstances. We also, as you know, are making plans for a summer experience for our first year students, those new Hoyas who have not had the chance to really spend time on the hilltop yet. So please know there's a lot of planning and more detail to be shared about that work very soon. So I think, Father Mark, I'll leave it at that, but please know tremendously difficult times. Really appreciate the patience, the partnership, everything that goes into this challenging year.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Todd. Like I said, I think, I know how deeply committed you are through the process and to the students. And so I know how it weighs upon you, and that the decision, like you said, it was not an easy decision, and you couldn't please everybody. But I think, working with health and welfare and really the safety of our students during this amazing, almost terrible surge going on around us. So thank you very much. Well, I want to just kind of, we're calling this kind of a webinar on a kind of an Ignatian journey, because I'm a rising senior here at Georgetown, 4 years into it, and I've been very impressed in my conversations with you and many of your staff, Jean Lord and many others, who just have a real sense of the Ignatian element to what Georgetown's about, the texture of the Jesuitness of work here. And so I wanted to give people an opportunity to see you in that light, because they always get to see you in the light of academic affairs, vice president, right? So tell our community a little bit, where are you from, and where did you go to undergrad, and kind of what's the trajectory that led you here to Georgetown?
So I'm happy to, Father Mark, and I will start by saying I came to my Ignatian experience later in life. I grew up in a very small town in Minnesota, Battle Lake, Minnesota, population 708 when I was a kid. And I grew up a little Scandinavian Lutheran kid, and went to undergrad at a place called the University of Minnesota Morris, a small public liberal arts school, had a great experience, great friendships, and was really formed by that experience. After graduate school at the University of Kansas, where I thought I wanted to be a counseling psychologist, got a master's degree there, did an internship, and discovered that doing therapy all day made me very sleepy. It wasn't the right path for me. But I went off to Denver, Colorado, and thought I would stay there at the University of Denver for just a couple of years. I ended up spending 16 years at Denver, got my Ph.D. there, had 7 different job titles, met my wife, Regina, who's very clearly the reason that I made the conversion to Catholicism. She said to me fairly early in the relationship, Todd, I'm raising the kids Catholic, you can do what you want. And that was not her only approach to recruiting me, but it was one of several effective ventures. So after 16 years at Denver, I really, had made my mark there in some ways, had really been educated and formed by that place. But I knew there was something missing. And late in my time at Denver, I remember conversations with colleagues where I really wanted, in this leadership program we were developing and in other ways, to bring issues of faith and meaning into the conversation. And I remember at Denver that was just regarded as unfashionable. It was not something we really talked about. And so I was really hungering for a workplace where I could be my whole self. Wow. And in fact, looked for jobs mostly on Jesuit and some other Catholic campuses. And I remember applying to Georgetown in early 2002 and thinking to myself, what's Georgetown? They'll probably never hire me, but what's the harm in sending in a resume? But the fact is that it clicked, it worked. I came to Georgetown that summer of 2002 as associate vice president. A year later, the gentleman who hired me, Juan Gonzalez, moved on, and they had the opportunity to move into this vice president role. And almost immediately upon arriving at Georgetown, I was connected in with opportunities to engage this Ignatian tradition, the spirituality, the approach to education. And so really dove into those opportunities. Maybe more of that on future questions. But the fact is, I am in my 19th year now at Georgetown, still enjoying it, still learning a great deal. And this place, more than any place I've ever worked before, has formed me in powerful ways. And so I'm very grateful for that.
That's so beautiful. That's great. Yeah, I knew you were in Denver. I didn't know it was that long. I taught at Regis High School in Denver. So I had a good 5 years there. I missed the weather and the beauty of the place, but you're right. Nothing compares to Georgetown in that regard. So, you are also, someone with who studies higher education, studies the formative moments of higher education. Can you tell us a little bit about, your own research and your doctorate, perhaps, or just what's your intellectual or academic passions that you bring to the job?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And I've been for more than 30 years, I've also had the chance to teach. as well as being an administrator.
That's right. And you're teaching this semester. You're teaching this semester right now, aren't you?
Right,
Yeah.
in nursing and health studies, a course called Group Dynamics and Health Promotion. I'm getting some time organized to grade the final presentations that are coming up.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, thank you. Small class, but wonderful conversations there. But the areas that I've done research on, my master's thesis is on developing a leadership program for students and seeing what impact it had. The answer was not a great deal because it probably wasn't intensive enough. My doctoral research was on the partnerships between faculty and student affairs staff to enhance student learning. And I've had a chance to be part of those partnerships in powerful ways, both at Denver and here at Georgetown, especially with the Engelhardt Project, which I may talk more about later at Georgetown. But I learned some interesting things from that research about what motivates people from both sides of that aisle to come together in the interest of student learning. In my time at Georgetown, I've had the chance, I am not a researcher, I'll be clear about that, but I've had the chance to publish articles and pieces in a few different publications on entrepreneurial leadership, on curriculum infusion. And I've also had the chance, I just have to show off here, my most recent publication is a book chapter in this book on student affairs work at Catholic colleges and universities. Probably you won't find it in the front rack at Barnes & Noble, but it's useful for those of us who do this student affairs work at the more than 200 Catholic schools in the country. And my chapter there is on dealing with controversial events. And in the Jesuit and the broader Catholic network, there's no better place than Georgetown to think about and learn about how to deal with those controversial speakers and events. That's been one of the real gifts of this place, is figuring out how these rich and often contentious academic and intellectual conversations connect with and resonate with our Catholic and Jesuit identity. So it's been great fun to write about those things. In the last few years, I've had the chance to teach both in our School of Nursing and Health Studies and also the alternating semesters to teach in our new higher education program at the School of Continuing Studies. So I will fire that course back up in January. I'm excited about that.
You know, you're right. Georgetown is a place, Todd, that where because it's the political heart of the country, if not the world. The questions of how politics and faith and values it gets played out, and I really do believe you and so much of the administration, as well as the student body, most of the student body are really there to kind of create a space to have those difficult conversations, to do it with civility. Obviously, we're talking about our 18 to 22-year-olds, so sometimes it's not the most civil and it's not the most, but for the most part, I've been just really impressed with the depth of conversation around making sure that it happens within these kinds of the world of Jesuit education, and really with great dignity and respect. So kudos to you and your group on that. You know, that's maybe a little bit of a difference too, because we kind of think that, oh, the Georgetown student is an activist, but I don't know. I wasn't around in 1968, but I hear my Jesuit brothers who would say, well, in 1968 they were throwing Molotov cocktails in the buildings at our Jesuit colleges, and so something's changed. You know, there's much that's the same about our undergrads, and there's a lot that's different. So if you were just, you know, you've been in this now for this game a long time. If you count Denver and Georgetown, what would you say are the comparisons to the student experience in the 1980s and 1980s? What's changed, what's grown, and what's new?
Yeah, so very good questions, and those are issues I spend a lot of time thinking about. I think I would say when I was finishing up my undergrad in the early 1980s, it was a time of a little bit of activism. It wasn't 1968, but I remember the solidarity protests in Lech Walesa and Poland and other things. But the fact is, in the early 1980s, and you'll remember this too, many things were simpler and many things did not move as fast. And I think that the internet age and our constant connection provide tremendous benefits, tremendous connectivity and awareness, but also can erode our ability to engage in depth and our ability to reflect. And as you well know, Father Mark, one of the leaders of the Jesuit order, Father Nicholas, has talked about what he critiques as the globalization of superficiality.
Right.
The fact that our constantly connected multimedia world means that we often don't get into depth. And that can make it more of a challenge to form real relationships. And the fact is, there's also generational change that has an impact here. I'm going to keep holding up books until you tell me not to. So
Great
this
book.
book that many of you may have seen, called iGen, came out 3 years ago. Jean Twenge's a social psychologist who wrote about the generational change we're seeing in folks born since 1995. And the reason for her title is these two things that happened in 2006 and 2007 when Facebook opened up to the world beyond just college campuses, and when the iPhone hit the mass market, became ubiquitous. And those things have meant that those folks in this generation that she calls iGen have always been connected. Right. That has some positive impacts. It also has some negative impacts. They are always comparing themselves to one another, as are many, many older folks in our society as well. That can have a very negative and difficult impact. So the sense of generational change is very palpable for me as I see students who come to campus less likely to have had jobs in high school, less likely to have engaged extensively, interpersonally. And let me note that our Georgetown students in some ways are outliers here. They tend to be the most engaged, sophisticated, well-prepared of young people in America. But with that noted, there still are differences. And this generation does have a different set of needs that they bring with them. There both is awareness that is really helpful in building the kind of inclusive community we want, and there is at times sensitivity and a lack of readiness to work through some of the complex issues that come up. So while I have tremendous respect for our students, they do bring some different gifts, different challenges than was the case 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, I remember when I just got here, you were talking up that book and you were having your staff read the iGen book. When I immediately got it myself and was just so, there's our students, and again, maybe Georgetown's the outlier, but that generation's got more anxiety and more prone to depression. And so these are things that we have to really, have our radar on, not only in terms of student affairs, but on the campus ministry, our spiritual, connectivity too. So. Yeah, that's a fantastic book, and it was really you. I saw you talked about it, I think, when I first got here. So we read it in my department as well. Wow, I think that Georgetown Student Affairs is it's a community really that really works together, and I've been really pleased and happy to be kind of a partner with campus ministry. And that's not always the case. Sometimes campus ministry and mission ministry and student affairs, they kind of walk in parallel universes, trying to do the good, but never together. And I feel like we've collaborated really well. And you have such great people on your team. I was just wondering, is there any stories of your many years here now where you've really felt the building up of the Georgetown community? You've really felt this is a historical moment, or this is a friendship that really embodies for you what these values are about?
Yeah, Father Mark, I can point to several examples of those moments. Some of them easy, some of them difficult. I would say, first of all, that our mission, our Jesuit values are never more sharply on display than in times of crisis and times of loss. And when we have sadly lost, members of our student community over the years, those are the times when I think most powerfully there is a partnership in place that holds and supports students, families, faculty, staff, in a variety of ways. That has been powerful, and I hope we go through the next 10 years seeing none of that, but we just know the reality in our world is that we will face, some of those losses. I would also say that, in much happier notes, I mentioned this Engelhardt project, which I was one of a group of people in conversation 15 years ago about launching this new program to bring health professionals into undergraduate classrooms to connect the intellectual and the lived experience of our students. And that has been, for a variety of reasons, which I had only a very small amount to do with, a tremendously successful and nationally recognized program. And it means that students can consider their own well-being and the well-being of their friends through the lens of the intellectual ideas they're exploring in psychology classes, in marketing classes, in theology classes, in a variety of ways. And so it's been great fun to be part of that, to see it grow from this sort of startup that we were eagerly recruiting a few faculty into in 2005, to a partnership now that has involved a number of our Jesuits, frankly, and other colleagues in campus ministry, along with faculty in more than 30 departments, in an average year, the Engelhard Project touches at least 1,500 students.
Yeah.
And so that's been, that's been great fun. I would also note another moment that was great fun for me was a journey we were on together just a couple of years ago, and that was going through this Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities Mission Examen process. A chance to look at and do a self-study of how it is that Georgetown's living out its Catholic and Jesuit mission and identity. That was a process that involved some great colleagues. Father Mark was very much a part of that team. President DeJoya asked me to lead that team. It's been one of the most enriching experiences I've had at Georgetown. And that helped both to launch a set of great conversations with students, with alumni, with faculty, with frontline staff, with administrators, but also helped to crystallize what is it, as Ignatius would say, what is the good we're hoping to do? It helped us to be more intentional about the directions we wanted to go in forming and developing our faculty and staff, in advancing Ignatian pedagogy in the classroom and beyond it, in forming the formal conversations which you now lead, which carry this work forward. So that was another great example for me.
You know, Todd, I think what you did really well there was about at least 150 Georgetown people that were consulted and in conversation. But I think you called us all as leadership to risk making explicit what is implicit about coming to Georgetown, implicit in our community. To make explicit, to be able to risk using the language of faith, using the language of formation, using the language of virtue and value. And it was a really good, energizing experience for me too. I have to say, only being here for a year when that all started, it was like I got to see Georgetown almost taken apart and then put back together again by the assessment of these priorities. And as we can both claim, Father General Sosa in Rome, the Father General of the Society, he approved and said, yes, Georgetown is living out its Jesuit and Catholic, heritage, its tradition, and in a prophetic way at times. So that was really, really cool. Well, job well done. I think that for me was also the time when I got to know you the best, obviously, just because we were in so many darn meetings, huh?
Every Friday. Yep, every Friday for months.
I do think it's a huge job you have in student affairs, especially given all the special kinds of needs that come to the millennial generation, the iGen generation. It's a huge job, even without a pandemic, So you have a lot of gifts. I could name those things. What do you think you bring to the job, and why did it, why do you accept the offer to come here to Georgetown? What was the synergy about? Maybe you can go a little deeper into that.
Sure, I'm happy to. And again, the things I hoped for when I came to Georgetown have all come to fruition. It's not to say that I've sort of made magic things happen, but the hope that I had, that I articulated before, about being able to bring my whole self to the workplace, being able to engage these issues of meaning, of faith, etc., that has really happened here, and that has been enriching. I would say a few things that for me, I hope have been useful at Georgetown are, number one, I am sort of known for being a person who can facilitate conversations, bring people together with differing views, and both find some common ground, and also to be able to articulate where the tensions are, where the differences in views are. And often those go unspoken, and that can just have some costs as people sort of walk around them. And again, there are times when I have been completely ineffective in that work, but there are some other times when I believe I've been effective at bringing some conversations forward, helping things happen for students, for our staff, with faculty colleagues, etc. I think that also there was a body of learning I did in my doctoral work around sort of early 20th century humanist philosophers of education, John Dewey, Alfred North Whitehead, etc., that resonates really pretty perfectly with some Ignatian principles. And this idea of educating the whole person, the idea of cura personalis, which, by the way, is not just about educating the whole person, but also thinking individually about the specific needs of the individual in front of you. And so being able to design learning experiences for students, living environments, new programs that bring those ideas together has been great fun. I believe has benefited our students here. and I hope has been helpful for the staff and faculty who've been involved in, in some of that learning. I think that the other thing I'd say that's been great fun about Georgetown that I don't know that I've contributed too much but have enjoyed is what I would call the quality of the conversation.
Yeah.
Some of this is about the caliber of students that come to Georgetown. Some of it is about the caliber of faculty and of staff who are here, but some of it also is deepened by our Ignatian mission and our shared commitments. And I think that has mattered. And I think there is permission, authorization, it's stylish to go into depth in some ways. And that has been, great fun to be part of. Now that means that the conversations are not always easy. And there have been times of real contention, as dealing with student activism is both important for us to grapple with, and it's very challenging to grapple with.
Yeah.
But I think some of those gifts help equip us to do that in ways that are more productive, more powerful than if we didn't have those gifts.
Yeah. I think that's coming from the Midwest myself, coming to Georgetown, and because of its, again, the political energy around it. I was deeply touched by the way that I could have dinner I could cook a dinner with students who are part of the Young Republicans, and then I could cook a dinner with the Young Democrats, and we could have, really, really nice conversations, really sane conversations. And we were doing these dinners at the Jesuit community. We were bringing 2 and 3 clubs together at one time to have dinner with Jesuits. And again, the level of conversation, having 3 or 4 friends that are in a club, sitting across from 3 or 4 friends, people of another club, having them converse at such a deep level, it's really inspiring. You're right. We have what I like to call wicked smart kids here, and for the most part, they rise to the occasion. And that's such a great value that you brought also to kind of nurture that. And I think really Georgetown in general and its formation with students is done. Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to kind of get a little bit more focused in just this. I know you as a man of deep faith, and you've talked a little bit about your conversion into your move into Catholicism after marriage. But could you maybe speak a little bit of what that journey's been like now for these many years at Georgetown, especially shape these Jesuit values and things like that? And I want to go into maybe the next question will be, you were one of the early people that did the Ignatian Colleagues program. So we'll get into that in a second. But just maybe can you maybe just a little bit about that journey?
I would be happy to, Father Mark.
Besides your wife saying that,
it wasn't just a matter of compulsion. There was a little more to it than that. But I think that some of the particular Ignatian gifts in my faith journey have, first of all, they've grown in a variety of ways, but most powerfully through my opportunity to do the spiritual exercises in the 19th annotation format. And I did that actually here at Georgetown, had the opportunity under the leadership of Father Phil Burrows, who was Vice President of Mission and Ministry, but I worked with Father Gaplo Biondo as my spiritual director. And the exercises were very powerful for me and still guide the way that I pray today. And a couple of the gifts from that experience were, number one, the way that Ignatius starts the spiritual exercises, the presupposition. This seeking to save the statement rather than condemning it, seeking to find the good in the other, even when that is not the easiest path to take. That has been one powerful gift. Another sort of key element of the exercises that's been valuable for me is this idea that Ignatius develops of attending to our own sense of consolation or desolation, of being consoled, being comforted, versus being desolate, separate from God, separate from where we should be. And for me, being attentive to those movements in myself has I think strengthened both my awareness and my practice in a variety of ways. And the third gift I would say is something I learned from another wonderful leader, Father Howard Gray. In his writing, he developed, again, out of some elements of the exercises, he developed this sort of 3-part process that he calls attention, reverence, and devotion. And that's really about, attention being taking the other, the situation in front of you, the person you're dealing with, seriously, really attending to them. The reverence is in understanding sort of the sacredness, the importance, the value of that person or that situation. And the devotion is about how you act, how you live into it from there. And I know you know all this, but I'm just sharing for, for some of our listeners. And that model is still a powerful one for me to keep in mind and in appropriate ways to try to share with others.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You mentioned Howard Gray and Father Phil Burrows, both people who just really helped kind of anchor that turn of the, turning as we went into the 2000s. I just really feel that I really stand on both of their shoulders in terms of my job, hearing people like you, Todd, and others who just speak about how they kind of created this fertile place to really engage Ignatian spirituality, the exercises, to make the examen, that attentiveness part of our daily lives, and kind of our way of proceeding, another Jesuit phrase, this way of proceeding, a style of proceeding. That's cool. I would like everyone to know, all of our listeners, we have this thing called the Ignatian Colleagues Program that's been going on for quite a while now. And I was wondering if you might speak to it. Let me just say that to the group here, it's basically asking administrators and faculty from all of our Jesuit schools in this network in the United States to kind of take a deeper dive into the spirituality and in the values that animate our institutions, such as Georgetown. So maybe can you just tell me a little bit about your program, what it was like, and maybe how did it affect you?
Sure. So thank you. And the Ignatian College program has been tremendously formative for me, and I still have connections, people I'm still friends with because of that program. And it really has, and it's evolved a bit. I was in the first cohort, and I'm really grateful to President DeGioia and to Father Phil Burrows for sort of pushing in that direction, that I might be, one of those, punk kids around campus who could benefit from this. But the 5 elements are the sort of opening retreat, 3 days long, and I did that at the White House Retreat Center outside St. Louis, Missouri, in a freezing January weekend, but a wonderful experience. And then at the 18 months later, a closing retreat, and mine was at Loyola University Chicago, and again was just very meaningful for me. In between were 3 things. One, a series of online courses which really engage deeply in content around history and spirituality, approaches to education, areas of tension and concern, etc. That was rich learning. And 2 other elements that now everyone takes as part of their ICP program, but for me, I'd had the chance to complete both of them in advance. One of those is an international immersion trip, and one of those is completing the spiritual exercises, usually in the 19th annotation format, but it also can be in an intensive retreat at a retreat center. I talked a little bit about doing the exercises. I completed that about 2 years before I actually started the ICP program. And that, as I said, was very formative. And I had the chance to go on 2 immersion trips through Georgetown. First 2 weeks in Kenya in the summer of 2008. And that was a program that ran for a number of years, very powerful and a wonderful experience. And then in November 2009, Father Burrows organized a trip to El Salvador for a group of about 15 of us. And that was, the timing was to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Jesuit martyrs at the University of Central America, the 6 Jesuit priests, their housekeeper and her daughter, who were murdered by basically the death squads in El Salvador. And being at the UCA, that university, on that Saturday night with thousands of other people, mostly from around Latin America, but also around the world, marching with candles, seeing the flower sculptures called the alfombras that they created to commemorate that event, and understanding both the solidarity of that moment and also the incredible tragedy and the incredible cost that led to it, was one of the most profound experiences I've had at Georgetown. And this awareness that I was part of a tradition that mattered so much. These people had died for it. Yeah. And not in some distant history book, but in 1989. And to see what that means and to witness what the presence and the prophetic voice and the impact of Jesuits has been around the world was really powerful.
Yeah, wow. It's been such a, that 1989 is such a pivotal year And that commemoration still goes on at Georgetown every year. We do it during Ignatian Heritage Month. As a matter of fact, we moved Ignatian Heritage to November just so that we could make sure that we could honor the martyrdom of these Jesuits and these two women, but also to remind us how it was just 20 to 25 years ago, as you said. It was not that long ago, and 30 years now. And that in many ways, Oscar Romero is now a canonized saint. There's a lot of those Jesuits who are now servants of God. There's a sense that the church really lives and is embodied, not in like Thomas Aquinas only, but in somebody just 30 to 40 years ago, or someone even 10 years ago. So very, and this is a question a little off the key, but I also think that immersion trips for whether faculty or students or staff are the most wonderful transformative moments, because everything gets kind of like condensed or kind of magnified. Bonds of friendship are created and really forged, a sense of shared witness, and a sense of now that we have this experience, we can talk about it together. We have more words at our disposal. And one of the things that I've been trying to do in this job is really to kind of expand the immersion trips. But yours is one of, Kenya, I keep on hearing about it from, it's just like waves of faculty and staff talk about that experience so much. Wow. Yeah. Fantastic. Anything else about the Ignatian College program? It's still going strong. I know they're tweaking a little bit. Obviously, in the age of COVID, they're doing everything online and things like that. But I've been really impressed. I've been really glad that even, our COO, Jeff Chattis, has done it. So many staff have done it, and some of our faculty who are really becoming, larger citizens in the university have done it as well. So good. Anything else on it? Do you want to say? I don't want to,
No, I will just add at this point, as it's going strong, there are more than 20 Georgetown colleagues who have been part of that program. And so it is, I think it really seeds an awareness and a capability and a readiness to live out the mission that is, that really matters. And it's just been great fun to be part of that group.
That's great. Thanks, Todd. So, we use that term that actually you helped kind of coin, for me at least, having Georgetown strive to make explicit what is often implicit about the place, about the school, about the experience. And when I arrived here, you and Phil Burrows and many others put together these Spirit of Georgetown banners that really hang almost, a good half of the year, reminding us what we're about, reminding us what those values are, that we are contemplatives and action, that we are women and men for others, we are community and diversity. It's ad maiorem Dei gloriam. The modus is filled, the more is filled up in this desire to do greater good for God. So of all the many Jesuit values, and then we now have another one, this 10th one we put in, care for our common home. Which do you see as the most pressing at this moment of our nation and world? Or maybe the first couple, I'm sure they all come together.
They certainly do, but Father Mark, I think that the one I would feature the most is one that you mentioned, is women and men for others. Yeah. This sense that what we are here for is not just ourselves, that we are not just, this is not all an exercise in self-aggrandizement. This is an exercise in generosity, in attentiveness, etc. And I've seen that play out through our students in so many ways. There's such a generous and committed group of students. I've seen it play out certainly in my staff colleagues in student affairs and other places. I've seen it play out in our faculty and many alumni and parents who volunteer and help out. One of the most powerful moments in crystallizing that for me is a sort of a noted Jesuit, Father Greg Boyle, who's the founder of Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles. He's been on campus a couple of times, but one night I was there when he spoke to a packed ICC auditorium full of students. And his mantra that I just love, that has stayed with me, was this. He said, "Dear students, Georgetown's not a place you come to. Georgetown's a place you go out from." And that really stayed with me. And that sense that we are being invited, being called, being commissioned to go out into the world where there is need, where there's tremendous need, where there's tremendous injustice. that is what we're called to do. And so the chance to see so many of our students, so many of my colleagues respond to that kind of charge that Father Boyle crystallized in that way that's been really meaningful for me.
Wow, thanks. Yeah, yeah, and I do think I think the students, they get it, and it's so nice to have these phrases around campus that they can use to kind of deepen and sharpen what it means for them to be agents for good in the world, to think of the common good. And you're right, they all kind of bleed together. I always think that cura personalis and women and men for others must go together, because cura personalis without women and men for others, it can be a little bit like, take care of me, right? But really, cura personalis, how do I take care of you?
Yeah.
And I think students come thinking, do cura personalis on me. But by the time they graduate, they realize I have to do cura personalis for others.
On others, yep.
And that really is the key texture. And I think we get it. I do. I listen to students getting it more and more as a sense that, we've been given a lot, much has been given us, now much will be expected of us to help make, the kingdom or God's world or this place a better place. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I love those banners, and I love the fact that we have a new one, that we're still a growing university. We thought Pope Francis has said we need to care for our common home. Environmental justice, environmental sustainability is a value of faith. It's a value of the Christian tradition. It's a value of the world. And so by putting that in as a 10th kind of thing, we spent a lot of time at New Student Orientation on talking about that. So it all kind of fits together, doesn't it?
Yep. It sure does. It sure does.
So before we go into asking any questions from any of our audience or something, is there any advice? Let's go back to the fact that we're just, we're in a pandemic. It looked like it was kind of just leveling up. But boy, it's worse now than it was in the spring and summer. I mean, it's the worst we've ever seen. The death toll, the people getting tested positive, the hospitals being filled up, and so there's an anxiety. And we're in this moment of Thanksgiving and stuff. And any advice, given your many years of experience and your wisdom, any advice you'd give to parents or alumni about how you are coping with the pandemic and how this pause in life on campus has affected you?
Yeah. So I'm happy to, and I think it has been. I will say, I don't want to hype it too much, but I think it's pretty clear to say the time from the 1st of March to now has been the most difficult part of my professional career by some distance. And so the demands are constant, the emotion is high, the anxiety is clear. And I know for me, and I think for most of us on this call, unless we have lived through wartime or the experience of being a refugee, this is probably the most sustained and severe uncertainty we've faced in our lives. Yeah. And I know that's true for me. And again, there are a variety of life experiences on the call, but I think for many of us, that's probably true. So I think that calls on us to keep a couple of things in mind. One, I will just say I have this little Examen app on my phone that I try to use, and having that as a tool is powerful. I will also say that for me, walking each day, each night, and around campus when I can is powerful, and just being in nature matters. I think also just a reminder to be gentle with myself and expect that things will be imperfect. The day will end imperfectly. Tomorrow will be another day. Some good things will happen. Some things will probably go wrong again tomorrow. And so adjusting to and understanding that, and I'm used to managing a lot of tasks and wrapping them up neatly and checking off the to-do list, and understanding that if I brought real disappointment about the imperfections of these days with me to bed every night, I wouldn't sleep. And so I think that just being gentle with yourself, and I know for me as a parent, also being gentle with my kids. I have one in college, one in high school, one who's an adult. They're all struggling in different ways. And so I think that gentleness is important. And then I think also understand where we're looking for simple answers. And I know I am powerfully motivated. Many people I talk with, I've talked to a lot of parents and students and other colleagues. We're all looking for the simple, clear answer. And I'm reminded, one of my favorite Albert Einstein quotes is, make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler. And I think that when we think there's going to be some 5-word answer, some ready resolution to this complex problem, We just have to adjust our understanding and know that, it may not be that simple. Things will mess up our plans. We'll do our best to adapt, and next week, new factors will come into play. And so I think the last probably idea I'd throw in here from our mission is this idea of Ignatian indifference. And it's not always easy to cultivate that indifference, but to the extent that we can, and some days I can and some days I can't, but to the extent that we can, I think that that sense of indifference, that sense of saying, Lord, I know this day will bring me what it brings me. Let me be grateful for whatever that is. Let me respond with my best to whatever the day is like. I think that can be valuable to us, to our students, to everyone around us who is impacted by this really cruddy situation.
Yeah. Well, that's so well said and really profound. That Ignatian indifference is such a hard thing under a pandemic. I know there's a Jesuit in the Jesuit community of Wolfington High. I won't name him because I don't know if he wants me to, but he just says, I wake up and I just prayed to God. I said, help me to give up what I think is normal and just engage the world as it is. That kind of that space in between what my expectations of how life should be and really just engage, let it come to me. And that takes grace and a prayerful centeredness, a way of knowing yourself. And I'm glad you know who you are, and I'm glad that this Jesuit Ignatian world has animated you in that regard. So, well, let's, Todd, let's go to some questions. We've got a little bit of time. We've got about 10 minutes or so, a little bit more than that. Kelly, should I read, or I can see them, or do you want to read it, or what do you think?
I think it tends to flow great when you read them.
Okay, very good.
I'll continue to share them with you.
Okay. Great. So we have a question. Can you share a little bit about the Jesuits that you have worked closely with in your time at Georgetown? And maybe also about the collaboration you've had between student affairs and the Jesuit community and the student experience. So it's a good question. Yeah. Who are some of the greats here, the Jesuits that you've really enjoyed working with? Well, of course, if you've enjoyed working with every Jesuit, I'm sure. But
I will mention Father Mark in addition to our partnership, which has been wonderful, and I really value it. And in addition, I've already talked a lot about Phil Burrows, who is a wonderful leader and continues to be. I've talked about Gap Biondo. A few more I'll toss in there. First, the first Jesuit who really taught me was Father Brian McDermott, who did seminars for board and new administrators in 2003, and that was wonderful and just a really thoughtful man. I had the chance to work with Father Tim Godfrey, who directed campus ministry, one of the most gentle and pastoral leaders that I've worked with. Father Kevin O'Brien, who's now president at Santa Clara University, was a very dynamic and thoughtful leader, and partnered with him in many ways. I mentioned Father Howard Gray, who was just an incredible teacher. And most of these Jesuits, especially Father O'Brien and Father Gray, have partnered with me on educating the staff in student affairs in past years in ways that were really valuable, that really mattered. I've had the chance to partner with folks like Father Matt Carnes and the late Father Jim Walsh on our speech and expression committee. Those connections have been valuable. I've had the chance to watch our Jesuit, who I believe knows every living alumni and several thousand others, Father Otto Hentz, who again is a wonderful teacher. And his tagline, I've heard him say in a couple of speeches, is some version of, it's not so much about the questions that I have as about the question that I am. And that's something that Father Otto has shared more than once, has always stayed with me. So, so there are lots of other, I really enjoy working with Father Shendon, who is your partner now, leads campus ministry. He's great at connecting with students. So many of our Jesuits, yourself included, have lived with students in the residence halls and partner with the residential living staff, from everything from, brownies, Father Chris Steck's another great connector with students, to real conversations, to mentoring student groups. So in all those ways, I could go on and on, but those are just a few of the, the highlights of the Jesuits I've had the chance to get to know.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, all those men are just such really giants in this in the community as well for all of us as Jesuits. That's cool. There's another question about participation in a Rome program with the AJCU. Can you elaborate about what this program is and its impact on your work?
Sure. So actually, the Rome program I had the chance to take part in was through ACCU, the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And from time to time, Georgetown has sent a delegate to join that group. It's a group of deans, vice presidents, provosts, sometimes presidents from Catholic colleges who go spend a week, about 10 days actually, in Rome, meeting with Vatican officials, which is fascinating to see a little bit of the inside of how that works, touring sites, understanding a little bit of, of history. We got to go see Benedict's Cave, which is also in the hometown of, I'm trying to remember, Sophia Loren. It's some Italian actress's hometown is in Subiaco, but at any rate, that's not important. But the fact is, it was a remarkable immersion in the global church that was really valuable, and I learned a great deal, made some great connections on that trip as well.
Yeah, I think the Lay Center is in charge of putting it together with the American universities and Catholic colleges, and this is where we use through them. We also do some immersion trips with students. So I take my kids to Rome, my students for my Rome course, where we have lunch and a nice conversation with the graduate students at the Lay Center, taking their courses. So beautiful people over there.
Definitely.
Yeah. Another question, as an alum, this person writes, I remember fondly living in Darnell's second floor next to a resident minister who often had us over for tea and snacks and helped my roommates through a trying time. What does the resident minister program look like in more recent years? And can you share what you see as the value added to the student experience? That's right. Resident ministers is a kind of a thing that you and my office and your office collaborate well together.
Definitely. And Father Mark, I'd say that, first of all, the resident minister program is still going strong with more than 20 resident ministers. I will note right now, because of our odd conditions and closing down some buildings, they all still have a home, but some of them have been moved around to places that we're still occupying. So it's been tough. Can't wait till they're all back in place with our students. But with that noted, I see the resident ministers performing a variety of really critical functions. First of all, just the quality of the conversation, as I said, and just modeling a genuine care and interest in students, modeling enthusiasm about their own faith. And while we have many Roman Catholic residential ministers, we also have folks from the Muslim tradition, other Christian traditions, Dharmic traditions, et cetera, that really enrich the understanding. Something I should have mentioned before, Georgetown is so rich in both taking faith seriously and in welcoming this interreligious dialogue, welcoming and promoting the pursuit of all our students' different faith traditions. And the resident minister program also, lives that out in a variety of ways that really matter.
Yeah, one of the things we're doing as a resident minister myself is just sending an email every week to the students that were in the dorm last year, just asking how they're, and then being available if they wanted to just Zoom chat or email. But I have gotten about 4 or 5 emails from students who says, "Hey, yeah, Father, I'm now living in Colorado, or I'm actually living in the Georgetown neighborhood, and it'd be great to get a cup of coffee, or just great to hear from you like that." So I do think that connectivity has been one of the things during COVID that we've been trying to do as much as we can. And I know there's a couple of options. Well, our next question says, hi, Dr. Olson, will it be possible to include the freshman retreat in the hoped for summer programs for the current freshmen? If I might start and say, since that's kind of what I want to do, that's my department. Yes, we're hoping there's a couple options. There's perhaps a May-June option. There's also an option that's been talked about for the late summer. Either way, the idea would be to get people to the Calcanini Contemplative Center and to really do that escape retreat for freshmen before they become sophomores, that freshman retreat. And I know we partner with that. In many ways, your office, Todd, has really helped us expand what we would consider a retreat that really is grounded in faith, to also those students that are not perhaps people of any faith. And so we do 2 retreats now with your staff helping us for the nuns, right? The NONES, none of the aboves when they came to Georgetown. And it's a retreat that says they hunger for something, but they're not quite ready and available to give themselves to the faith tradition. So anyway, I kind of preempted the question, the answer perhaps, but do you see that as being worked as part of the summer programming for freshmen?
I think it's vital to work it in. So Father Mark, I think you said it well, and I think you're on target.
Yeah, I really do think that this might be the one intense moment where we can share with students of 20 to 25 going on retreat, and having the juniors and seniors who are to lead those escape retreats, I think is so phenomenal. And I'm really hoping that if we got all of them back, say, or as many freshmen as we could, wow, what a great, powerful experience they will have. It's interesting, Todd, I've been talking to a lot of freshmen. Lots, and I love talking to freshmen. I Zoom chat with them. I sometimes see them in the coffee chat down at Saxby's if they're living in the neighborhood. But I want to say, and I want our viewers to hear this, I am so impressed with how there's almost a stoic acceptance of the reality. They're not going crazy. If there's anxiety, it's a shared anxiety with their friends, with their parents. And so although I know that it's been hard, I've also just been it's an old-fashioned word, right? I've been edified. I've been moved by seeing how they've been responding to each other, how they take care of each other, how they've got their little Zoom clubs of freshmen. There's a couple of kids that went on the Zoom escape retreat, the virtual one, and they've never met each other except through the Zoom boxes, and yet they're meeting for a half hour each week to check in on with each other. And I just think, again, really talented, bright, deeply edifying kids that we have.
Yeah, they certainly are, and we know many of these first-year students are finding ways to connect, and I am very pleased to see that. We also know, and I just want to acknowledge that for some of the students, it is much tougher to connect. And I just want to acknowledge that reality, that we know that there are struggles there too. But as you noted, there is so much resilience, patience, care for one another that we're seeing, that it's generally very encouraging. But please know we are eager to get these students back on the hilltop.
Amen. Yeah. And that's what I say to all too. And I really do. I'm just so in the midst of all the surge, just to have that sense that these vaccines seem to be quite good, that this might come to the general public by early summer. It's such positive news. And I think we will have grown stronger. Pope Francis just made a huge comment recently, talking about what in a book style length thing about what he hopes that COVID won't just be something like, oh, we got through it and then we didn't learn anything from it, right? We didn't learn about our humanity. We didn't learn. He wants to make sure, let's make sure that we get through it, but we've learned to be deeper, to use that word that we use so much at Georgetown, grateful, another word, gratitude, and that we know that we can make differences now, so that this doesn't have to happen again. That we can work things out. So, I mean, it's easy to be at a Jesuit school when Pope Francis is in charge, right? A man who was a Jesuit himself, who just seems to have such a pastoral insight into the human heart. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, very good. I think that's the last of the time we have, and so I'm sorry if there's any more questions, people. We're gonna have to wait till the next conversation. Todd, thank you so much. I wish you a real happy Thanksgiving with your family. And get some time off. I know not such much a burden, but I know this has been a stressful time, and you've done such a great job, and really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us.
Well, Father Mark, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the kind words and for all your support as a colleague. I really value working with you, and I wish everyone who's on the call a peaceful and happy Thanksgiving. Take good care of yourselves and take good care of one another.
Great, thanks, Todd. And everybody, we'll be back with one more before Christmas, a kind of an Advent Christmassy conversation with Father David Pratt. Father David Pratt is our Orthodox Christian minister, and we're going to talk about Christmas East and West, kind of the ways in which these two great traditions of the Christian faith collaborate here at Georgetown, but also what are some of the kinds of the differences and similarities, excuse me, between these two faiths? And that'll be kind of upcoming December. I'm sure you'll be getting some emails for that. So we'll sign off then. Todd, once again, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, alumni folks. We really appreciate you being with us today. Ciao, ciao.